the Q code. Your curiosity quest starts here.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Q Code Podcast with your host, Danny Travis, now in here. Hoping that all of you had a wonderful holiday season and a happy new year. But we're back like a heart attack. I don't know, that's a weird saying.
Back like heart attack?
I guess they're saying
have a heart
that,
attack back.
What do they call it? Pulmonary implosions?
Embolism?
Oh. Pulmonary embolism?
Pulmonary implosion.
But maybe they're just kind of saying, like, once you have one, then you're prone to have another. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean,
The really...
That would have been a good question for Alan's idiom episode a couple months back.
Yep, quite a few months back, yeah.
There's an N-STEMI and a STEMI. The STEMI is the one that you don't want. It's the really bad one that will kill you right away.
I don't want a STEMI.
It's a ST elevated myocardial infarction. That's what it stands for. N-STEMI means not that.
So if you had a heart attack after you passed gas, would that be an infarction? A myocardial infarction?
We could just have a whole episode on conditions that we come up with.
I think the main difference is that one of them you're totally blocked in the artery. The other is you're not all the way blocked. So,
Okay, well, we're going to get this
we've
going.
STEMI'd that
forward.
conversation. Get it? Got it? Good.
Thank you all for joining
Stymied.
us for this week's episode. We're going to be talking about Hollow Earth theory. And if you're sitting there thinking, like, what is that? You are in my boat because I don't really know what it is.
I'll give you a hint. It's a theory about a hollow Earth.
A hollow Earth, which is very dumb because
Have you been to the middle of the Earth?
No, but I've used a shovel and I've gone down pretty far.
Well, I'll give you some insight into how far you would have to go
Is that a lot?
as we talk about it.
I didn't know if, like, I'll give you some insight and then you just went quiet.
here in Utah, we have the Kennecott copper mine.
Yeah, we've dug
that's a pretty
quite
big
a
hole.
bit.
It's true.
But
They started on a mountain. So they kind of handicapped themselves because really, what are they? Are they even down to the valley level? Who knows?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, so we're going to get to that. We'll talk a little bit about it. Before we do that, though, as always, we have a quick question. And today's quick question is, what conspiracy theory would you want to know more about? So we're not actually in our answers here, we had the idea that we're going to come up with these conspiracy theories that we'd like to learn more, and then we'll just mention them, but then we'll actually use that later for another episode or two. Maybe we throw all of our conspiracy theories together, or for one episode, or maybe they're long enough that we can have each individual one. So,
And with that said, I think this is actually a good time that if you, the listener, have any conspiracy theories that you would like to know more about, hit us up on social media or let us know some way so that maybe we can dig into that as well.
Because there's probably a bunch that we don't even know exist.
oh, there's tons.
Yeah. So
So
but this
many.
way, you guys might be more excited about your own than you are about ours. But who knows? Maybe yours is ours and ours is yours.
All right. So how about one of you goes first, because I got to pull mine up.
I'll go first. So the conspiracy theory that I want to know more about is the conspiracy theory that NASA has actually found actual life on Mars, but they're just hiding it because they don't want the public to freak out about us colonizing Mars. Like, in this theory, the end game is for NASA to colonize Mars, but if there's life there already, then people would be like, well, now we can't colonize it because then we'd be destroying the life that's already there, and that's bad. We can't do that. So
Yeah.
NASA's hiding the fact that they've discovered life from the public, is the theory.
Freaking.
I think that's a good one. But I do want to point out, could we have possibly have guessed that Alan would have gone off Earth?
That is why I did not do any conspiracy theories in that genre because I knew Alan would cover it.
That actually would be interesting to see what I think sometimes is interesting is the conspiracy itself. It's what people like, why they think the conspiracy even exists in the first place, if that makes sense. So that'd be interesting. I can go next.
Yeah.
The conspiracy that I would like to know more about is actually one that happened fairly recently. I believe it was 2014. I would like to know more about the Malaysian Airlines flights MH370.
Oh, that is
supposedly disappeared. I already know where it went. It went to the island in Lost.
Yes. Which, because it was like time travel too, right? So like that's why they were able to go back in 2005 or whenever Lost started.
And it was a Malaysian flight.
Was
it
really?
show?
Yeah, I think there was like that, like not turnover, not cover up.
But I think
that lap over, the overlap.
That's probably because I think statistically, like it seems like most airplane crashes happen in that same area of the world.
I will just not fly Malaysia
in the Indian Ocean. I think it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I would be interested in knowing what happened with that flight because, like, it's just in 2014. I remember thinking, like, how do we lose an airplane? Like, through all the technology we have and radar and satellites and all that, like, how do you literally lose an airplane? So it'd be interesting to kind of dig into that side of it to see like what went wrong and how they actually lost the airplane. But at the same time, this is sad to even have to admit, but in 2014, I went through a period, like a significant period of my life where I must have just not been paying attention to the news. Maybe it was just like a lack of caring or what, but...
You said in 13 and 14?
Well, like in 2014 when this occurred, I found out when I used to be in a bowling league. I went bowling in my bowling league, and someone in my league said, "So, what do you think about this whole Malaysian airplane flight thing, like disappearing?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "You're like, whatever, you know." I'm like, "No, seriously, what are you talking about?" And then turns out it disappeared a full 7 days before I learned about it. Like, it was a week that I did not know about this flight. So. Well, after that,
did you just not talk to anybody in that week? Because you wouldn't even have
everyone I talked to didn't news. Say anything. I didn't watch the news. I apparently don't pay attention to things on Facebook or social media back then. I didn't like everything. Like I was just cut off from, except for sports, pretty much. And so in the end, I have made it a point that each day I at least just kind of check the news to see what's going on in the world, so I don't miss another disappearing flight or major event.
All right. Well, mine is. The conspiracy theory or urban legend called Paul is Dead. And that is Paul McCartney. And that whole theory behind that song that, like, if you play it backwards, that it says Paul is dead. But the whole idea is that he died in
a car accident, right?
I don't know if it was a car accident because I didn't look that far into it. But like November of 1966, and was secretly replaced by a lookalike. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about that. I've always like known about it. I've heard about it, but never really looked into it. So I would like to do a little bit more research on that.
Isn't there also conspiracy
That was
theory?
actually one of my runner-ups.
Gosh, dang it, Danny.
So I would like to know more about it too, though, because I do vaguely remember something about it, but it is something I want to say. It was like he actually died in a car accident, but they didn't. It was like right when they were hitting like huge fame, and they didn't want to like miss out on that, so they replaced him with like a lookalike, and then he was like sworn to secrecy, like he could never tell anyone or something.
Yeah, we'll learn more about it later.
Is there just like a conspiracy theory surrounding each of the Beatles' deaths? Because like I swear there's a John Lennon one.
I don't know if there's a
conspiracy.
Yeah, well, with him, no, just some dude shot him, but it was a crazed fan. But anyway. I'm sure
or so they say.
But, all right, well, let's get into the main topic here.
For centuries, there has been a legend of a land untouched by time. Authors have written about it. Explorers have vanished searching for it. And one man will set out to discover the truth.
A journey to the center of the earth. It wasn't just science fiction. It's inspiration.
And that's what the Hollow Earth is about. Brendan Fraser. So, yeah, that is from the movie Journey to the Center of the Earth. I think, what was that, Trav? Early 2000s?
Yeah, it had to have been. It was like after the Mummies and before his complete and total disappearance from film. So
that is true. He's not really around very much anymore.
What was his like was it Encino Man? Was that like his very big,
love Encino Man.
giant like big movie, his big break?
Probably, because I can't think of anything before that. Not that I was necessarily paying attention, but
He likes your cones. Whiz the jitters.
Pauly Shore.
is Pauly Shore like your favorite actor, Trav?
No, but he's in some good stuff.
He's another guy that's basically disappeared.
Yeah. I think
he
everybody
still-
got tired of his because he was pretty much the same person in
Like the
every
same
single,
type.
I think he still like runs like the Comedy Store or some famous historic stand-up comedy place in LA and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like his
Well, I'm sure
family
he's
came
still-
from stand-up, I
Yeah,
think.
I'm sure he's still doing, like, working at something. But as far as movies go, anyone in Encino Man. Wait, isn't the other guy in Encino Man the Hobbit dude?
Yeah. It's
Oh, so who would have thought that he would have like the best career?
Elijah
at this
Wood?
point?
no Samwise.
Samwise, the other one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna.
Radio? Wait, what's that movie he's in? Rudy? Radio?
Rudy. Yeah, Rudy.
What's Radio?
There's Radio Flyer with Elijah Wood.
Oh, okay.
If you were thinking that.
Well, radio's like when you. I mean, I can explain
There's
the
also a
background
movie
of
called
it, but
Radio with Cuba Gooding Jr.
Is that football?
I don't know.
it's when you go in your car and you like turn on the dial.
Radio.
It's all based on waves and different hertzes. I'm pretty sure.
The electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah. So that's radio for you. Okay. Anyway, let's get into this. The Hollow Earth theory.
You're the one who was holding us up.
Just a quick side note on this as we get into it. Trav does have prior obligations, so he may have to step out at some point during this episode. But Alan and I will just take it from there and we'll finish it out. So
I will try and give you as many awesome comments and commentary and jokes as possible to help you fill the rest of the time with the void that I leave as I as I depart. I have
the void,
Yeah.
no pun intended,
The
that we're
void.
talking to about the Hollow
There's
Earth.
definitely
theory.
a pun intended.
Oh!
Actually, there was no pun intended, but I'm glad I said it. Let's get to the void.
Okay. So, well, let's get into this. Like, let's give Trav an opportunity to shine here really quick. So, why don't you guys both just give me what you would just imagine or assume the Hollow Earth theory is about? I'm assuming none of you guys have, like, dug into it yourselves. So,
Doug.
oh, there's so many puns.
No, I have not, mostly because I wanted to kind of leave it up to just, learning, I don't know, spontaneous commentary, helps in these situations. So I didn't really want to know a lot about it. Figured you also was running out of time to actually do anything. So, but as far as I know, Hollow Earth theory is about the middle of the Earth being hollow, and maybe people living there. I don't know. Like, are people living there?
Very astute. And
I don't know why they live there.
I can't actually even give you like a yes or no to that because it depends is really the end. There's a lot of it depends when it comes to this theory.
I mean, I guess the question I really have is why, kind of like with the
Flat
I don't know,
Earth?
flat Earth, but just with a lot of, I get where the flat Earth kind of comes from because, we were, as far as scientifically, scientific purposes go, like, we did not have the technology to tell us that the Earth wasn't flat back then. And so that was just what they believed. Well, now we definitely have the scientific technology and all that to tell us. We've had people go to space and look at the Earth, but yet they still think it's flat. Whatever. But I'm just sitting there thinking, like, why did somebody come up with this conspiracy theory? Like, why is it important for the Earth to be hollow?
So I hope I can kind of answer that for you
Okay, well,
actually throughout this.
answer it.
Alan, any thoughts to add to that or any what are your original thoughts as far as what the hollow earth theory is?
So my original thought was like that maybe it's somehow related to the flat earth theory. Like, I mean, or is... My question is it related to the flat earthers at all, or is it just like a completely different sect of people?
So you think
or is it
the
like
Earth- you
is it
think
like
the
a
Earth is-
merger of the two that somehow, because like so much of the flat earthers theories have been disproven that now they're like moving toward this hollow earth for some reason. Like, oh no, that's what it is.
So I'm just trying to picture. So you're thinking that they believe that the earth is flat, like a disc, but also hollow. What part would be hollow?
No, I'm saying that flat earthers came along, put out all these theories, but
And
then
then
are
basically
scientifically
are, like,
disproven.
transitioning to
and
the
yeah, so
hollow
some
earth
of them are transitioning over into the hollow earth theory.
So like,
because
we cannot go with
when
mainstream. We have to come up with
exactly
something
because like
else.
we got into with flat earthers, a lot of it was like kind of the community. They enjoyed
Yeah.
being a part of this community, and kind of they banded together as they felt like they were the outcasts of society, and that banded them together as brothers or something like that.
Like,
So they found their own community and felt at home there. But since science was disproving all that some of them started migrating toward this other weird theory that
maybe
is not.
I mean, I cannot speak and
Scientifically
say
valid.
that for sure nobody has ever transitioned from flat earth to hollow earth or
fine.
hollow earth to
It's
flat
not
earth.
flat. It's round, but it's at least doesn't have any material inside. It's totally void.
Well, because you got with the flat earthers, you started getting this kind of dome. So now you have like half a sphere, like it's a snow globe almost. You know. So it's not that big of a transition to just go to.
Well, I don't think they ever said that was a dome. They're just showing you like that's the atmosphere is in that domey part. And plus they have to build, like when they're building their maps and they have to put a glass covering over the top, they put it in a dome.
Okay.
But I don't know that there's any real transition between the two. Just
And
to answer
also,
your
kind of
question.
like Trav,
I don't think there is.
my main question is just like why?
What's the purpose?
Why?
Of it? Okay. So why don't you answer that question?
So
Flat, or why?
we'll
hollow?
go through this and hopefully I answer that. But basically, right now, I can give you guys kind of what the overall, like the thing is that's confusing is there's different variations of the theory. So it's not like every single hollow earthist, if that's what they're called, is going to earther is going to believe these exact things, but this is kind of, I compiled all of the main beliefs that they have and just kind of put them in here. So right now, they kind of believe that the Earth's crusts is, so the Earth is hollow, right? And then the Earth's crust is around it. The Earth's crust, though, is 800 miles thick.
Oh.
So that would explain why Trav, when he digs for his swimming pool or whatever, is probably not quite getting to
Oh, you have a
800
swimming
miles.
pool. I've just used a shovel is my point.
So you might have got like 8
I've seen
feet.
people buried at least 6 feet.
Yeah, but maybe not 800 miles.
And I've seen, foundations dug for homes that are deeper than that.
I don't know. Probably like 15, maybe even 20
I don't know.
feet. I don't know. But they also believe that there is 2 openings, one at the North Pole and one at the South Pole. And each of these openings that leads into the inner Earth is actually like 4,000 miles wide. Right there, for me, like that's the first red flag.
Have
'Cause
you
that
guys seen a
seems-
hole that's 4,000 miles wide?
Because that seems pretty
So
excessive.
bigger than the continental United States.
Yeah, that's a giant hole on both sides.
And it's very specific. It's at the North and South Pole where it would be real easy to just take a quick look on a, satellite
image.
Yeah, just be like, no, North and South Pole are still intact with 0 holes.
They also...
And in fact, the North Pole, it's just an ice cap. It's not land there, right? The North Pole is like the ocean, but just ice capped over.
That's where Santa lives.
not a continent.
Of course, there's land.
So maybe that's where they're getting away with like thinking like, well, it's just underneath the ice.
But
there's
there'd be
hole.
a 4,000 mile hole where water is just pouring into.
I don't know. It's hard to come up with like a solid argument for the Hollow Earth. I will give you that. I'm going to do my best and as to give these guys a fair shot at explaining what they believe. But they also believe that inside of the Hollow Earth is a floating sun. So we have a sun inside of our Earth.
So the core.
Yeah. But it's just like it's all empty space except for the middle is this sun that half of it is the light side of the sun and half of it is a dark sun. So I guess they're thinking that the sun is there in the middle, and then as the Earth rotates around the sun, it's either daytime or nighttime, depending on which side of the sun you're on at that given moment, is my understanding of what they believe. Once you get into the Hollow Earth, another question people would have is like, well, so say you found this 4,000 mile hole and you hopped on in, right? Wouldn't you just fall?
Yes.
But apparently gravity works differently. And so actually you don't fall, you just cross the threshold and then you just end up upside down. Except for you'd feel like you're right side up, but you're just like on the interior walls of the Earth. And now the gravity is there because they're basically saying you have all the crust around you. So you have all that mass in the crust and that's what's generating the gravitational pull. So whether you're on the outside or the inside, you're still being gravitationally pulled down towards the crust. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You look like you have a comment, Trev.
It just sounds funny, being pulled down towards the crust.
And we're not talking about
I don't
pizza.
like crust.
So yeah, that's kind of how they believe gravity works. But they also believe that half the Earth's mass, and Alan might be able to answer this a little bit better than I can, but they believe that half the Earth's mass is involved in the crust, in the 800-mile thick crust, right? And then also half the mass is contained in that sun in the interior. So if half the mass is in the crust and half the mass is in that sun, is it the fact that we're just standing on the crust and that's why we're being held to it? Because wouldn't there be some kind of like pulling gravitational pull back and forth between this same mass amount of sun that's in the center of the Earth and the crust?
Yes.
So if you were to... Well, go ahead, Alan.
Okay, first of all, in the real world, like our crust is nowhere near half the mass of the Earth because we have a giant iron core in real life, which is made of iron, so it's way denser, and the crust is like, I don't know the exact dimensions, but it's something like
30 kilometers deep or something? Is that
I
right?
don't know. I think
it is?
I think I've heard about it's likened to like maybe the skin of an apple.
Yeah.
On
I mean, yeah, I can answer. If
on
you
an
were
apple or something.
if you were to take everything out of the Earth and only leave the crust, it would be equivalent to 0.4% of the Earth's mass.
Yeah.
So, literally, like less than 0.5% of the Earth's mass would be all of the crust. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, so it's not half of the Earth's mass is in the crust. So you're not going to get that much gravitational pull from that anyways.
Don't they realize...
If there was a sun in the center of the Earth would collapse. I mean, unless there's structures inside holding the shell up, like giant pillars crossing the void from one end of the Earth to the other on the inside, then the shell would crumble and collapse into a spinning disc like
the flat earthers believe.
like a protoplanetary disc.
That's how it becomes flat.
But then you would have a sun inside and you would just end up with a solar system. Because that's exactly how a solar system is born. Like you have a big spinning cloud of gas and dust called the solar nebula, and then it's spinning at its equator which gives it like some centrifugal force there outward. So it's like when you spin dough, pizza dough, the spinning makes it flatten out. And where it's not spinning at the poles, that just falls in because of gravity. It just, so it creates a protoplanetary disk.
So maybe the flat earthers are onto something, Trap.
Well, so basically what you're talking about is just creating a solar system where the sun in the middle and then the crust of the earth creates a little planet.
Yeah.
So let's say they want to get
And the
in
little
there.
planet would not be hollow.
They just jump through that 4,000 mile wide hole, and they just fall. I can just see, just like, yay! And then they get to the sun, and it's just like, they just fizzle out.
So I mean, that's I guess why they have to believe that you are still stuck to the crust, just on the interior walls of the crust instead of falling.
So,
to your
But I
demise.
have heard like if there is like some like if we could build it future transportation system where if you could drill a hole like right down through the center of the earth, or it doesn't even have to be exactly through the center, it can be like, you know, going from this point to this point through the earth's crust or whatever. But if you jump in the hole, say it was from North Pole to South Pole, and you were in like a capsule that you just dropped from the North Pole, it would go down, accelerate, and then once it got past the center or midpoint, then it would start decelerating.
And it would bring you back.
And you would pop out the South Pole like exactly with the
like you could
at
literally
zero,
just step out. Yeah,
at zero.
It's not like you would fly out.
Velocity.
Yeah, that's part of it. There's also the Coriolis effect, I believe it's called, where because the Earth is spinning so fast. How fast is like 1,600 meters per second, or
maybe in meters, like miles per sec, or not per second, per hour. It's going like a little bit over 1,000, maybe 1,100 miles per hour.
Yeah, well, meters are a lot shorter than miles.
Oh, you said meters per second. I thought you said kilometers.
But anyway, the point is, like, if you were to just like fall, right, Trev, and it's spinning that fast, you'd actually get pushed because you're on the Earth and it's moving. So when you jump, you're actually still moving at that speed this way. But as you go down, you would do this fade thing, and you would eventually just like run into the wall,
like the gravitron.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they did an experiment apparently at some point where there was like a mile deep shaft, and they decided, what's going to happen if we throw bowling balls down here? So they did, and then when they did that, the bowling balls never showed up at the bottom. So somehow they must have, I don't know, like gotten embedded into the side wall or something. So that's kind of another thing, but these are things that are showing why it would be very difficult for this theory to hold any water.
I just want to know who the idiot was that volunteered to be at the bottom watching for them.
He's just lucky that Coriolis effect actually.
And because we are up here on the crust, so the people living up here, we could be called crusties.
Oh, all right. So let's do this. What we're going to do is I'm just going to explain how they got here. So it's going to be like a little travel through time, I guess, if you want. We'll go through because sometimes theories are developed and you wonder why and how they got there. So the reason originally was they can date it back to 1664. A German named Kircher published a book called Mundus Subterraneus. And within that book, I can tell you, he says, in the book, he claimed that the Earth contains a central fire and vast underground lake and lava chambers. At the North Pole is a gaping vortex that sucks water down to the central fire, where it is heated and expelled out the South Pole. So, ironically, he's kind of right in the fact that there's like a central fire, meaning like there's the molten magma in outer interior, I guess you could say. And lava chambers and stuff. And actually, they have found water 400 miles below the Earth's surface. So that almost like explains the lake. So it's kind of funny that he actually was possibly fairly accurate on a lot of this stuff. But the thing is, Kircher had no scientific backing on his claims. Like he just made it up completely. So that's what happened. But then several years later, in 1692, you guys know who Edmund Halley is?
No.
So do you guys know Halley's Comet?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
So he's the one that discovered Halley's Comet. But apparently he also believed in the hollow earth theory. So he came up with a theory, but his was actually somewhat based in science because he was a scientist. So he came up with a essay that he called "What Curiosity in the Structure, the Hollow Earth in Science." So he came up with like a model that wasn't just how we explained it, like, oh, it's just a hollow earth with a sun in the middle. His model was more of, we have this earth, but it's comprised of 4 different levels. So we have the level on the exterior, which is earth, where we are, right? And then inside of that is another smaller ring, about the size of Venus. Within that is another smaller ring, the size of Mars. And then within that is another smaller ring, the size of Mercury. So he's basically, it's almost like he's saying there's like a planet within a planet within a planet. But then also they are all rotating in different directions. And apparently through this rotation is how he can describe how gravity works and how the Earth is able to maintain an electromagnetic field and an atmosphere. Because that's a huge deal. Like if you don't have the molten magma interior, then we technically shouldn't have a magnetic field around the Earth protecting us. So then people ask, well, okay, so how, if that's the case, and he also believed there's life down there, how would life survive if they were just like inside the Earth? And so his answer to that was that they had luminous atmospheres. So somehow the atmospheres within that area were luminous and they actually could provide the nutrients for plants and stuff like that to actually create life. So there is life in each of these layers. So he also described it because back then it was popular belief that all of the celestial bodies or planets contain life. So he figured that this was God's way of basically creating a high rise.
What do you mean a luminous atmosphere?
Like an atmosphere that would light up and then
Just on the interior.
Yeah, so probably like chemical properties, I would assume, would be maybe their thought is like some kind of chemical reaction creates luminosity, but it also is giving off light that can actually create like photosynthesis and provide life. So he also kind of thinks of it as in, this is a high rise. So we build, like if we build a city and we need more space to live, we just build taller buildings, right? So he felt like this was God's way of building like a high rise. So he's like, well, there might be too much life just to be on the outside of the Earth. So we're going to create these subterranean levels of life within the Earth. And then not only that, it was also popularly believed that all planets would be built like this. So they would all have like different levels of life within them.
I like how they don't even have scientific evidence that our Earth is hollow, yet they're now making claims. It's like, well, it's not just ours. I mean, like all planets.
I mean, at least they were saying like, we're not special. It's just
yeah. I mean, we've never been to any other planet really, but yeah, they're all hollow too.
like what year was it that Galileo was? I mean, obviously he was around before this time, right? Because then I don't think that he would have found Halley's Comet without a telescope.
Galileo, I think he was
like
I want to say like
1400s?
400 years ago. Maybe 1400s.
Okay. But anyway,
I'll get back to you on that.
that's beside the point. So now you kind of get an idea. There's a dude that just made it up, and then at least there's a dude in Halley who is a scientist who actually came up with it and started moving this kind of theory forward. It goes back to like at this time, though, you almost can't blame them because they're just trying to figure stuff out. They don't have the means or the wherewithal necessarily to test these things appropriately, right?
Well, it's my time to pretty much leave, but I'm going to leave you on this note. I do blame them because it's a stupid, stupid idea. I don't care if you didn't have anything.
How did you come up with this?
How you can't just make, I don't know. I mean, you can make stuff up and you can say, well, maybe this is my theory, but you can't say that it is this without having proof behind it. And
Yeah.
this is what all of these people have in common with like flat earthers, hollow earth theory, other conspiracies, is that they do not have proof. They are all just theories.
Yeah. Or
Turds.
when they do try to prove things, they can't because that's not how it works.
Because that's not how not how it is.
And on the other side, there's overwhelming proof and evidence against their theory.
It's like, why you gotta fight so hard just to be right when you are clearly wrong? It's okay to say you're wrong. It's okay to say, oh, hey, I had this theory, turned out. Guess what? World is round. World isn't hollow. So
I guess it depends what your view of like right and wrong is, because there's like simple things that can be explained by some of their theories, but it's almost like they can't see past that, and then why like something else would be able to also explain that same phenomenon or event. But Trav's got to go.
Yep.
I think what we'll do, if he's okay with it, is hopefully he'll listen to the rest of this episode when we're done with it. And then maybe he can just give us any comments that he has in like a 2-minute spiel at some point in the future.
I can do that. So
Okay.
thank you, everybody. We'll catch you next time. For me.
But we're still
Travis
here.
Out.
So Alan and I are still here. We're going to finish this off.
So to answer you about Galileo, he was born in 1564 and died in 1642. And when he first observed, I think this was around when he built the telescope, he first observed the 4 main moons of Jupiter was in 1610.
Oh, okay. But yeah, that makes sense. That jives
So a little
with
over 400 years ago.
the timeline of this, because they're saying Halley wrote this essay in 1692. So I'm assuming he would have found the Halley's Comet sometime within, give or take 10 years of that, would be my guess. Anyway, so once we get through Halley and his theory, we move into 1818. So there's a gentleman by the name of John Cleves Sims. He published a paper called The Circular Number 1 in 1818. So Sims is the one who actually implemented the thought that, hey, he kind of had a similar idea that Halley did, and then he implemented the 2 4,000 foot or mile holes on either pole, right? So he's the one that added that portion of the theory.
Does it say why he added that? Like, what's the purpose of that? Of adding?
No, there's no purpose that I could see or that I saw that explains, like, we need them to be like this size because it explains how something works. It's just kind of, I think he just decided there's got to be openings. And so we're going to create these 4,000 foot openings. But not only did he, and I don't know if he got that from something else and it just like it had built into his theory. I'm not even, I'm assuming that he didn't just completely, well, he may have made it up, but I don't think he thought he made it up, if that makes sense. Because I believe that he really thought like this is how it is.
He thought there's some logic somehow to having these 4,000 mile holes.
Yeah. And so like an exact quote from his Circular Number 1 is he says, when he describes what the interior is like, he says, it's a warm and rich land stocked with thrifty vegetables and animals, if not men. So he's basically hinting that there's life underneath in the interior of the earth, and it's just more of a matter of, is it just animals or is there actually intelligent life, like actual men that live in the interior of the earth, right? So that's kind of the next step that he's taking this to.
Like just like humans that either migrated there somehow or like a different offshoot of the what do you call them? Like Neanderthals, humans.
Yeah.
What's that whole genus or whatever called? Homo?
Yeah.
Homo
I guess
erectus,
because
Homo sapien.
Yeah, Homo sapien is like what ended up being humans, right?
Yeah.
And then there is Neanderthals and Homo erectus and different categories that ended up like not becoming humans, but were very similar.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, because basically it sounds more like he felt like there were mole people living down there is ultimately what happened. So he's like, I believe there's this, but I don't know if he thought of them as like, oh, they're actually giant moles that are intelligent, or if he just called them mole people because they live subterranean. Yeah. But do you believe that there was people or mole people underneath? And his thought process was, I'm going to go out and I'm going, his selling point was like, hey, if we can get down there, this is like a whole nother society that we can start doing trades and build an economy around. Because if we can find them, like, so basically it was more of like a, hey, it could be lucrative for us to find them and actually like get this relationship going with them. So that was his selling point as far as like, we need to do an expedition. We need to go up to to the North Pole, and we need to find this opening, and so that we can go down and befriend these people that are down there. Right? That's kind of his thought process. Through his life, so he kind of basically dedicated his life to it. He met a guy by the name of James McBride, who was a millionaire from Ohio. He got him, to buy into the theory. So between his connections and Sims, McBride and Sims were able to basically go to Congress and lobby to get this expedition approved. And so,
U.S. Congress?
Yeah.
So they were Americans?
So they're American, yeah. So they went to Congress. One of the people that really bought completely into the theory was John Quincy Adams, who was our 6th president of the United States. So ultimately, between John Quincy Adams and these two guys, they were able to get a vote going in Congress on whether or not they should execute this expedition to the North Pole to find this hole that would lead them to the interior of the Earth. In doing so, it did end up losing in Congress, but the vote was 56 to 46. So they actually were pretty close to getting this approved and going on this expedition. A lot of people, because John Quincy Adams was such a believer in the whole theory, a lot of people thought that if he would have been reelected for a second term, he would have just gone ahead and given approval and executed an expedition to the North Pole to find this hole. So things could have been very different had he not lost his next election. And I'm trying to remember who he lost to, who the 7th president was, but
I don't remember. But wasn't it also like a super close vote when it came to the colonies voting to band together and like fight the British? And declare independence.
Yeah, I do remember that. Somewhere in history books, I think, but I don't remember the exact count or anything like that.
If it weren't for that super close vote either, things could be very different.
It's true. Well, if it wasn't for that super close vote, then there probably would have never been this vote, because we wouldn't have potentially had a country.
I don't know. Go back and listen to our time travel paradox episode
to find out.
See if it's possible. Just kidding.
But yeah, so it's just kind of interesting how this theory kind of pops up from time to time throughout history, and then kind of inserts itself, and even potentially, smart, educated men are buying into this theory, at times. Granted, it's still early. There's still a lot they didn't know or learn until after this.
Yeah.
As far as how the Earth works and stuff. Because back then, probably if you said, no, their Earth is just a series of different layers that ultimately comprise into a molten lava mantle, and inside that is a iron core, like that probably could have seemed just as weird to them back then as it does now,
Yeah.
But going from that time frame, again, that vote happened in 1823 in Congress, jump to 1869, an American physician named Cyrus Reed Teed, whose very own brand of medicine combined alchemy with zaps of electricity and doses of magnetism, electrocuted himself so badly that he passed out, which is just as well, for when he came to, he realized that he was the living incarnation of Jesus Christ. Not only that, he also decided that the Earth is actually an inverted sphere, and this is the part I think you would find interesting. So it's an inverted sphere, so we look inside and in on, not out to the rest of the universe. So basically what he's saying is that we actually already live on the interior of the Earth, and inside the Earth
is the
universe
that we see.
So we look up and we're thinking we're looking out,
but we're looking
into the center of the Earth. And that's where the universe is contained.
The Earth is
larger than the universe.
Bigger, the size of the universe.
It contains the universe within it, apparently, is his thought process. Again, I don't necessarily think that he had any scientific backing for his theory. I think he kind of just came up with it after he electrocuted himself and gave doses of magnetism and whatever kind of alchemy concoction he came up with. But anyway, it caused him to believe that.
When was this again?
That was in 1869. So, but the crazy thing is, not only did he believe this, but he got enough people to believe it with him that he started a cult in 1894 in Florida, and they called their cult the Korshan Unity. And they had this community that they built there. And it was there for about 14 years until he died in 1908, and then most of the cult disbanded. But there was enough people that believed in this theory that the universe is contained within the Earth instead of on the outside of the Earth, which is visually kind of a cool thing to think about, but very little of that makes sense from a scientific or physics standpoint.
Because if that were true, I mean, unless Earth's made out of like some material that can forever expand, like the crust is just creating new crust all the time, we know the universe is expanding and getting bigger and bigger.
So in essence, you would have to be assuming the Earth itself is expanding.
Yeah,
and getting bigger and bigger.
In its surface area, it has to be getting bigger and bigger to contain this universe within.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it goes back to asking yourself the simple question of what's more probable?
Yeah.
Because it just seems less probable to me that the entire universe is contained inside of Earth and not that the Earth is just located within the universe.
What that is doing is what's gone on throughout history for as long as we know. Like, that's just trying to put us at the center of everything, basically. Only this isn't putting us at the center of the universe, but it is making us the special ones. So, like, at the center of it, like the universe is here for us.
Yeah.
Basically, like,
that's true. I mean, that does go back to when they thought the Earth was the center.
Earth is the center of the universe.
And the sun rotated around the Earth.
The sun and the planets go around us. And then
the sun was the center of the universe.
Well, and then the next theory after that, which was a step up, was, okay, we go around the sun, but the planets still go around us. And then we finally got the heliocentric, I think it's called, view, where it's, okay, the sun's in the center, but we and the planets go around that, but we're at the center of the galaxy. Turns out that's not true. We're like out.
Well, I mean, I think more or less
in the suburbs of our galaxy.
At that point, their vision or understanding of the universe was probably more of on the lines of a solar system base size. Because it seems like anything that you see from back then is just always showing like the sun and the planets and the moons, but they don't really ever describe or talk about like, oh, there's other galaxies and there's other solar systems and there's other,
because it wasn't
outside of basically our solar system.
It wasn't really until we had telescopes that we could look at other galaxies, and instead of like, I think galaxy actually means like gas cloud or nebula or something like that in Greek. I don't know what it is, but it wasn't until we had like powerful enough telescopes that we could actually resolve, oh, those are just giant other galaxies made up of that, and we can actually now resolve individual stars in those galaxies. So they're not just gas clouds within our own galaxy, they're outside of our galaxy.
Yeah. And I could see that if you only saw like a fuzzy image of something, that a galaxy could definitely look more like just like a puffy cloud.
Like a nebula, than
individual parts that are creating something that is just like what we live in this galaxy in essence, right? So that, I mean, I could see how they got to that conclusion, but yeah, I mean, obviously as humans advance and move forward and have better and better technologies and better understanding of everything, that's why we need to keep moving forward and change our points of view if we recognize that we're wrong, instead of maintaining the status quo of like, well, this is what it is. Like, so no matter what proves or disproves it otherwise, we're going to stick with this answer, right? Kind of a thing. So anyway, after that cult disbanded in 1908, it was in the 1940s that an Air Force admiral by the name of Richard Byrd had heard these theories. He knew about the Sims holes, those big giant holes at the poles, and he wanted to go fly over the North Pole and see if he could find it. So he did. He was the first one that they know of that actually flew over the entire North Pole and tried to find this hole. Well, he didn't ever say that he found an actual hole, but what he did say in his personal journal that he wrote down is that he flew over the North Pole, and as he passed the North Pole, there was a large expanse that was covered in lush green foliage in a place that shouldn't have been there. Like, there should not have been like this, basically this jungle just sitting in the North Pole. He called this place, this area, the center of the unknown. So that was kind of something that he found. He put into his personal journals. I believe they were published later in life when his kid found his journals or something like that. The interesting thing about this guy is he seems credible from the standpoint that he was like in the military. He was an admiral, you know, like he seemed, I just from what I saw in like documentaries and stuff like that. But again, you can't really judge sanity from an old documentary or anything like that. But then once he did that, 3 years later, he decided, I'm going to go down and I'm going to fly over the South Pole. So he did. He went down, he flew over the South Pole, and he claims that when he was flying over the South Pole, he did find a giant hole that led to the center of the Earth. He flew down that hole. When he got inside, he found an advanced race of beings that lived down there that were super advanced. They even had UFOs of their own. Basically, long story short, sounds like what he was describing was flying saucers.
Actually, so in this story, to the mole people or whatever, he would have been like a UFO coming in, like, oh my God, what is that?
That's true.
An alien from above.
Except for it's so clunky and like crude and just, it's not very advanced. It's like, it's a propeller plane or what is this? Yeah. No, I mean, I would agree because UFO obviously just means unidentified flying object. It doesn't matter that it doesn't have to be from outer space or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so like that's kind of what he claimed he saw. So he went back to I'm just assuming DC or whatever, and then tried telling people about it, like, hey, I went down to the South Pole, this is what I found, this is what I saw. And then claims are that the government didn't want him to talk about it anymore, and so they shut him up. Basically, it's like, don't talk
like
about
the
this.
government does.
Yeah, like we don't want anyone to know about the super advanced human race that lives inside the Earth and has flying saucers. So don't talk about it anymore. Kudos to you on finding the giant hole that is located in the South Pole, apparently. So,
just kidding, but like, there's so many conspiracy theories about how the government is covering stuff up, which, like, I feel like recently, I mean, I really like don't believe all those conspiracy theories, but I feel like recently I can definitely see how people get that perception, like, especially with, just not to be political, but like the whole Russia investigation and Trump and all that stuff, and the Mueller report, and how much of it is just like, well, that's all redacted because it's just classified.
yeah,
That's all just classified and then redacted.
I mean,
We can't read this. We can't read these 500 page because it's redacted and classified.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much stuff needs to be classified?
and I don't know that it's really this way, but it always just looks like somebody took like a black marker and just crossed out all the stuff that you can't see. But then you get some kind of crude photocopied copy of it. And so it's like, there's nothing. I mean, you're just like looking at like parts of paragraphs that are like, you could actually see and read. And the rest is just all blacked out with some kind of marker or something. But yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying as far as that kind of stuff goes. But I think there is a lot of just, I don't know what the right word is for it, but like moving, like, hey, like a magic trick, right? Like, I'm going to show you, like, look over here when I'm really doing something over here. I wonder how much of that goes on, but not just because it's the government, but just because people in power want to be able to control things in the way that they want to control things. So one of the ways you could do that as a country and or a person in power in a country is obviously to control the flow of information.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to is when you like some information gets out, but not all of the information gets out. That's like a feeding ground for people to come up with their own theories and hypotheses and like, well, from what I know, because I have 4 pieces of this puzzle, this is what I can conclude or I can come up with, but they're missing the other 6 pieces of the puzzle that would explain everything, you know? So I think there is probably some of that going on, but again, it's not like the government is people.
Like A plus B equals C. If you have all those pieces that are like freely given to you, you're like, yeah, okay, that's cool.
But they
A
might
plus B
give
equals
you-
C, but then they give you A plus B equals redacted. Can't see this part. You're like, what is it?
Well, not only
It's
that,
gotta be something.
but they don't give you the squared.
It's something crazy.
And it's like a crucial piece of the formula.
The what?
The squareds. So like,
Oh, A squared plus B
yeah,
squared
equals C squared, but they're like A plus B equals redacted, but no squareds. So you're left with like this, like,
That's
oh,
true.
I have pieces A and B. What's C? So you're so focused on what's C, but the crucial piece is the squareds, and you're not even paying attention to that, like, because you don't even know it exists. And if you don't know, you can't question. But yeah, let's move on more with and finish up this not flat Earth, hollow Earth theory. So yeah, so after Admiral Byrd claimed that he had found this hole in the South Pole and flew into it and found this advanced race, of beings and was kind of quieted. Well, since then, this whole hollow Earth theory, for the most part, most people obviously don't buy into it. It's not something that is just like, oh yeah, this is like a really high probability that this is true. But it still does move forward in some circles. So there still is, as we've talked about earlier, kind of like the whole idea that the basic thought is now that yes, the Earth is hollow, but it has these holes at the poles, and you can go inside, and there's a sun in the middle. One has like half of it's a light side, half of it's a dark side, as we talked about earlier, right? But there's also,
So they mean like a sun, like an actual star or something?
I guess, but I think that itself would cause all like. I would
'Cause,
almost
I
think
mean,
if you
when it-
had like a sun just constantly pumping out. I mean, if it's like an actual star, it'd be pumping out energy, right?
And that has to go somewhere.
Yeah. I mean,
Which
I'm
is-
sure they would try to explain it as in like, well, that energy just gets dissipated because volcanoes erupt, or I don't know. I'm sure they could come up with a reason.
If it's heating the interior in that much to make volcanoes erupt, hot liquid magma, then all the people inside are dead because they're hotter than the hot liquid magma that's erupting.
True. It's almost like even if it was like you pictured it as like a steam pot or something like that.
Yeah.
Like a kettle.
That's
It's just getting hotter and hotter, like all this pressure building up in there. Like it would eradicate any life like that is on the interior of the Earth's crust, as opposed to like
the law of thermodynamics. It's the steam that's coming out is less hot than what's on the inside. And the steam coming out is pretty damn hot.
Yeah. Well, I agree, Al. There is a lot of holes in this theory.
But 2 to be exact.
So I'm trying, I'm trying to just give all like the.
Well, no, you're.
Not
I know
necessarily-
you're
well, I
playing
know,
devil's
yeah.
advocate, and then
I'm just
like,
giving, but more or less like giving the reasons
Yeah.
and thoughts that they have or things that have been documented.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's way more things, like you said, that can disprove these theories than there are things that obviously prove the theory is correct, right?
like if there was actual sun that was half lit that could not work in nuclear physics.
Yeah.
It would have to be a sphere that's lit on all sides for it to be a sun. That's,
It would be hard to have like a half sun, half moon or something. Like all in one entity. But in current day, we just talked about the beliefs, but there's a guy by the name of Clough who believes some additional things, and I'm just going to kind of breeze over those really quick. And if you have any comments on them, let me know. But Clough believes that the Hollow Earth is a lush tropical paradise that houses an advanced race of humans / aliens / giants. So that's exactly how it was written. So I don't know if that means he believes that there are humans, aliens, and giants, or if he's just saying like it's like some kind of race, and he doesn't know if they're humans or aliens or giants
inside the Earth.
The inhabitants are the descendants of ancient races such as the lost 10 tribes of Israel. So he believes that at some point in time, people from the outer crust actually made their way to the inner crust and started this society or this new home, right, within the inner earth. He believes that the people in the inner earth are... Yeah.
Of the perfect... Should we just call it the upside down?
Oh, I mean, if there is like an actual sun down there, it's probably pretty ashy. So he also believes that the people that live down there are very peaceful and obviously, like we said before, they're extremely advanced. They're way more advanced than us. They already have flying saucer technology. The one thing I thought was interesting is that they continually mention flying saucer technology. So it's like the most advanced thing I think that they can think of is flying saucers. So, I mean, maybe partially because some of this was all created like in the 1900s, and maybe that really was kind of like, what's the most advanced thing we can think of? And they're like,
wait, when was this in the 1900s? Does it say?
Well, this is current. This is current times.
Oh,
that this guy Clough, this is what he believes, and this is kind of like what he preaches, right? So they have that technology, but because they're so advanced, and they live life in perfect health, they actually live a lot longer than we do. So the people that live on the inner earth actually can live for hundreds of years, as opposed to like our average life expectancy is like 70 something years.
I want to move there.
Yeah. I mean, if it was real, yeah, we should. But also, in addition to the fact that they live have perfect health, and I think part of it is because they found a way that like on the outside, we're polluting our atmosphere. We're doing all these things that are causing problems to make it so that we cannot live perfect health lives, right? Perfectly healthy lives. But inside, maybe they have found a way that they basically can, and plus it's kind of almost like a science experiment in my head, where they're like, we found a way, like we can contain everything because it's all like within the earth, you know? So if we just control everything inside of here, then we can control all of the variations that could potentially cause people to get sick and stuff, I guess, is maybe their thought. Also, because they live so long and all the conditions are ideal for life, they believe that the animals down there are extremely large. The trees down there can grow to be like 1,000 feet tall because they have like everything is like perfect conditions, and humans down there can grow to be like 15 feet tall. So they are in essence giants. Like they're a much bigger, healthier, vibrant race or life that lives down there than lives on the surface of the planet. But this Clough guy, the thing after all of that, in the end, he is convinced that because he's tried to set up a bunch of expeditions himself to go find the Sims holes, and every time he does, something happens. Someone ends up dying in a car accident, or someone gets cancer or whatever, and it ends up causing them to have to cancel their expeditions to go. So he is convinced that this is all the doings of what he calls the international banking conspiracy. So
the banks?
I guess he thinks that international banks are all conspiring to stop anybody from being able to discover the truth about this other race or the inner earth.
What does
maybe that goes back?
Have to do
maybe that goes back to the whole idea of Sims when he originally was like, well, I'm going to set up this entire like trade and this economy. Yeah. So maybe like the international banks don't want anyone else to know about this lucrative opportunity, and they already have all their stuff in place. So they are trying to keep everyone else from discovering that this other world basically exists on our Earth, right? So,
And now they can trade with Bitcoin and not be traced.
yeah.
It's not
So
tracked
maybe
back.
they
to-
really are the creators of Bitcoin. And they're the ones behind the whole thing. So that's kind of what he believes. That's the whole theory in a nutshell of where we stand today. Just a couple of interesting side theories that have to do with Hollow Earth that I thought were kind of interesting or could go down another rabbit hole, but we won't necessarily dig into those right now. Is there's the theory that Hitler and the Nazis actually made a deal at the end of World War II because they knew about the people on the inner Earth. So they made a deal with them, and then they came and picked them up in flying saucers and took them back and let them live in the inner Earth. And so that's where Hitler and the Nazis actually really went.
Let me just
after
tell
World War
you,
II.
Hitler was a very busy man in his day.
All of the theories.
He was doing a lot.
Actually, that might be an interesting list. Is just go through
All
okay, these are
Hitler.
all. This is what Hitler was apparently up to between these 2 years span, this 2 year span, because a lot of it does come back
true.
to just that last couple years of his life, and see if could some man really be involved in all these different things.
Where does he find the time?
But that's a good point. That's funny. Again, we talked about it. They believe that there's flying saucers within the Earth. So people will claim that these flying saucers can go from pole to pole extremely fast. So that's traveling just directly through the center of the Earth, right? And they're just popping out. They can pop out in the North Pole. They can pop out the South Pole and travel that way. And then finally, there's a facet that believes that the inhabitants of the inner Earth are actually the descendants of the people that were from the lost city of Atlantis. So they can tie the lost city of Atlantis to this inner or hollow Earth theory and saying that those people actually moved to the center of the Earth, and that's where they ended up when they disappeared. So that's just a few of the other theories that are kind of tied to the hollow Earth theory that you could explore if you were so inclined to do. Any of those pop out to you?
But
Any of those theories pop out to you?
to
To dig deeper in or just intrigue you or make you be like,
I mean, yeah, I definitely want to dig deeper and see what dig deeper into their physics or their scientific explanations of how the system works.
yeah.
Even
I think
even deeper.
if you can find
800-mile thick crust that will account for all the gravity on both the outer surface and the upside down world.
Yeah. I mean, there's information out there that disproves all of this as far as from a scientific point of view. Mm-hmm. But I didn't see much, and probably because you can't really prove that this works. Closest I could see is from what Haley found and his description of okay, there's these 4 concentric circles, one inside of another. They're all spinning in different directions, and somehow all this activity and mass moving around is what's causing the gravity and like I said, the atmosphere and the electromagnetic field to stay around the Earth. Mm-hmm. How the actual math of that works, I don't know. I don't
get how that
anything
would
of
create gravity.
Yeah, and so if that's something, if you can dig into that, I'm sure there's more dense material on that kind of stuff than I dug into. I was looking for more surface level ancillary. Is that
Ancillary,
yeah, items. More of just trying to understand what they believe.
Yeah,
right.
Unless he's talking about it would create gravity if you were on the insides of those shells that are spinning, and then
Maybe using centrifugal
force.
Yeah. I could see that, and maybe that's what it was that he was really describing. Because I think,
But then even at the poles, you're not going to have that centrifugal force creating the gravity, right? Only at the equator. But if you're at the pole, it's just in the same spot, so you would just fall.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying, but I don't. I mean, I'm sure that he has a lot more in depth. Maybe it's something that you can actually look up his essay and see what you can find on that. It would be interesting. But as far as things, and we talked about this already, so we won't touch on it too much. But yeah, like the iron core and the molten what would you call it? Like the core with the molten.
The mantle?
The mantle,
or
yeah.
Something?
Is what actually...
Or you have the inner core, the outer core, and then the mantle.
But that is actually what causes the Earth to be able to maintain an electromagnetic field.
Yeah.
Without that, we wouldn't have an electromagnetic field. So this is kind of like Exhibit A on why it's very hard to believe that the hollow Earth theory could actually be real, is because if it wasn't for the fact that we have this electromagnetic field and an atmosphere, then the Earth would just be scorched by solar radiation and it would be uninhabitable.
Yeah.
Like people would not be able to live on Earth. It would just basically be this scorched planet, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons that right off the bat you can kind of discredit or this whole theory. Another, and this isn't a theory discrediting anything per se, but they're just saying like, hey, okay, let's say that the Earth actually was completely hollow. So like we're removing, like they're saying that there's a sun inside of it, right? But if it was really just this crust of the Earth and the rest was completely hollow and you were to just jump inside, well, the gravity would cancel each other out because you would have the same amount of mass on all sides of you, right? And so because of that, you would just float around aimlessly once you fell inside the middle of the Earth. Like you wouldn't stick to anything. You would just float forever until you died. Because of the way that the gravity would work. But then also, let's say you go back to your thought, but this is the same kind of thing, is if you really just had an Earth that was hollow and had all the mass on the outside and had this crust, it would just collapse in on itself, and it would keep doing that until it was like a solid mass. Yeah, because that's just not how things work. They don't want to just maintain like this empty shell, right? So like ultimately it would collapse in on itself, and then you would not have a hollow Earth anymore. And then we did touch on the fact that, exactly like you said, only 0.4% of the Earth's mass is contained in the crust. So if it was only the crust, then that 0.4% of mass would not be nearly enough to keep you or I or really anything on the surface of Earth. We would all literally just float off into space. Yeah. Because there would be almost no gravitational pull.
Exactly.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, like, unless the Earth's crust was made out of some like super duper futuristic strong material that could somehow like support itself, like it was just sturdy enough or strong enough. But we know what Earth's crust is made out of. Yeah, it's not made out of any super duper strong futuristic material. Or else we would
rock and dirt and
or else we would just be building our skyscrapers like 10 miles high out of regular bricks.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like
and no like alloys and man-made type materials.
Yeah. And there's, I'm sure, a lot more, things out there that you could just discredit or disprove this theory with.
I was going to also
But this was just like a handful of what I saw right off the bat. And did you have another one that you were...
The only other one I was going to bring up was the tectonic plates that kind of rely on the idea of the continental plates floating on top of the molten magma or mantle. Is it the mantle?
There is a mantle.
Is that what the like liquid magma part is?
Yeah.
I think so.
But because otherwise you're basically saying that these things are just shifting on their own on top of just like thin air, I guess.
Yeah. Instead of being like dragged along by the spinning.
But you would almost think that if that was the case, if it was brittle enough to just be like shifting and moving like that, then once again that would prove that it should just collapse in on itself.
That's true.
Because it wouldn't be this super strong material that would not collapse, like you said.
That like we have like giant fissures in called fault lines that are like, it's the egg's already cracking.
Yeah,
it's about to collapse in on itself.
That's true, but I'm sure it happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, but that's the flat Earth, or not. I keep saying flat Earth. We did an episode on flat Earth already, but this is the end of the hollow Earth theory. So, if you guys have any questions, if you guys have anything to add to this, if I got anything wrong, maybe you are a hollow Earthist and I'm misrepresenting what you believe in, then let us know. Hit us up at our various social media platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, all of them. You can just look up Q Code Podcast, find us there. We have a website that Alan has set up so you can leave comments and even an audio comment on at www.qcodepodcast.com. Is there any other platforms that I missed out on, Alan? I guess you could email us at qcodep@gmail.com. I'm just trying to give everyone as many opportunities to maybe like I reached out to you on social media, I AM'd you, I hit you up on your website and I can't get a hold of you there. Somehow I was able to Google your phone number and I can't get through to you. Try the email.
Your phone number?
Try the email then, because I'm sure there's so many people that are just having the hardest time. So we're just giving you plethora of opportunities to contact us.
Yep.
So we don't miss any questions or thoughts or concerns that you may have about the Q Code Podcast. But before we end, Al, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I think that's it.
All right. So for Alan and Danny and the missing Trav, we will see you next week.